Every business owner I speak to says the same thing. They're posting content, they're showing up, they're putting in the work, but nobody's reaching out. There's no inbound DMs coming in, and you've probably tried everything. You've tried better cameras, you've more posts, hiring more editors, working with more agencies, and still nothing seems to be converting. And the reason is because your content looks exactly like everyone else's. You're sitting in the studio, talking to a camera, putting motion graphics on the screen that look fancy, and the problem is your audience has seen that 1,000 times, so they scroll past because nothing about your content signals you're different from every other person within your niche. Here's the thing, your market is making a decision about you before you even open your mouth. This is from the way your content looks, to the way it feels, to the production quality, the energy that you're giving off. This all falls under your perception. And if your content looks like you just scrapped it all up in a couple of seconds, then your market is going to feel and read it that way as well. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Moayad Sallabi. I've spent 12 years making content. In the past 2 years, built a brand to just under $2 million in revenue off the back of it. And the one thing I've learned is that what you say matters way less than how you make people feel when they watch you. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to build a cinematic personal brand that makes people stop, pay attention, and actually want to work with you. Just a quick disclaimer, this isn't a filmmaking course, so if you need a filmmaking course, you better take a cinematography class. This is aimed at coaches, consultants, and business owners who are struggling to attract high quality leads and want to make their personal brand look authoritative and well put together. And the best part about this is you don't need to be creative, you don't have to have expensive gear, and you won't have to spend hours every day recording. I've put together for you the best formula that will make you stand out within your competition while putting the least amount of effort into it. The first thing we need to understand about what cinematic content is understanding what does cinematic even mean. You see, a lot of people think cinematic is about the color grade, a lot of people think that it's about the cinematic music, etc., but it's not. Cinematic just means that there was intent in the way that you sequenced shots. That's all it is. It's all about sequencing, and it's all about having intent. If someone can look at your piece of content and they're like, there was intent and there was thought put into this, this is what cinematic is. Everything else is spicing on top. The color grading, the music, etc. Let's move on to the fundamentals of how to design an attractive and a very, very retentive personal brand. So now it's time to move on to the juicy stuff that everyone's always excited about, and how to make your videos look cinematic. And before we worry about anything such as color grading, etc., because that's what most people think cinematic content is, we need to first and foremost understand proper cinematic composition and framing. You see, composition is where everything sits inside the frame. It's where you are, what's behind you, what's in front of you, how much space is on each side. And you can take the same person in the same room or in the same setting and essentially make them look completely amateur, make everything look really, really bad. Or the exact same setting can look so much more professional just by understanding proper compositional and framing rules. So one of the most important ones that you will probably be using more than anything else is the rule of thirds, which you actually kind of see here at display right now. So essentially the way it works, the rule of thirds is essentially by taking the rectangle that you see, which is the frame, you split that into a 3 by 3 grid, and the 4 points where the line crosses are where the eyes naturally go. So what you're trying to do is you're essentially just trying to place your head on one of those points instead of dead center. Now this is specifically for talking head videos. Anything that's a point of interest, let's say it's your car that you're shooting, depending on the shot in itself, you want to either place it within one of these 4 points. For talking head videos, as we see here, is your eye should sit along the upper horizontal line. If you're looking slightly off camera to the left, position yourself on the right so there's space in the direction that you're facing. So in this example, I want to point towards the space. So as you can see, there's space here on the side. So I want to essentially direction myself towards the space. Some people position themselves across the other side, which doesn't work. Okay, then we're moving on to the next thing, which is depth and layers. So most people look at their footage as just one flat 2D image essentially. Typically what you want to do is you want to have yourself first and foremost in the middle ground, then you have a background, and then you have a foreground. And most people only worry about the background, and most people only worry about the middle ground. What you can do sometimes is add extra things within the foreground, such as your phone, for example, or a bottle or whatever it is. And if you add something in the foreground, it gives it that 3D dimension. For the background, you want to give it some texture. So a lot of people just sit and there's a blank wall completely behind them, just a white wall. If you can have depending of course on the setting, if you can have something like this where I've got, you know, trees and leaves, etc. in the background, or you have something, if you're in an office, like you've got bookshelves, or you've got a window with some light coming in on the side. Okay, these are a few practical things that you can add that makes the space look a lot more natural. Another thing, which isn't necessarily important when you're doing talking head videos, but when you're getting B-rolls, right? When you're getting these cinematic B-rolls, there's something called leading lines. So essentially, let's say if you have a road, okay, and you position yourself at the end of the road, it's just what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the lines leading towards the point of interest. Right, and I'm going to put up an example right here on the screen, multiple examples of what leading line looks like. And essentially, the lines just lead to the point of interest. Another thing that you can use as well is negative space. So a lot of people try to fill every single part of the frame, and it makes the frame look incredibly cluttered. But sometimes you can pull back, leave some air, and the whole thing feels essentially just that much more confident. On top of that, negative space can evoke a lot of emotion in general, in the sense that it can make the character within the frame or within the scene look very, very lonely. The other thing, which is also really, really important, is your camera height. You see, eye level is typically the default, and it's the right call typically for talking head videos because it's neutral, it's natural, it's direct, you're speaking right at the camera. But sometimes you do want to play around with the angles, and once again, the angles can evoke a specific emotion. So for example, if you place the camera higher than you angle it downwards, it gives off the vibe that the character or you yourself within the shot are a bit weaker, right? So it's less authoritative because the viewer is looking down on you. So we don't use this a lot in the type of content that we create, of course, as business owners. We don't tend to use this a lot. On top of that, you can also then do low angle. This is one that you're going to use a lot more because it's more authoritative. Essentially, you're looking down on the camera and it makes you look like the authority. Everything is about context, which is why it's incredibly important to be prepared in what you're trying to shoot. Like, what are you trying to evoke? What are you trying to shoot? What's the message or story that you're trying to get across? Another thing here, which is probably mostly like for vlogs, probably mostly for B-rolls, etc. So you don't need this as much, but it's still important to go through, which is camera movement and pacing. So movement is what turns a talking head into something that feels real, because that feels like a story. But random movement, like shaky pans or unmotivated zooms or handheld wobble, makes footage look worse, not better. So it's incredibly important that you're selective with your movement and that you know how to actually execute movement correctly. Base shot, the base movement that you're always probably going to use 90% of the time is a static or tripod, just as it is right now. This is simple for talking head videos. There's no movement, you know, feels grounded, it feels authoritative. You use it when you're saying something important, you're making a key point, or you're delivering a specific line that holds weight and you want that point to land. So think of it this way: when the words matter most, the camera should be completely still. Stillness is a form of emphasis. If the camera is drifting while you're delivering your best line, the movement competes with the message. This is a key fundamental, by the way, not just in the visual, but also in tonality and pacing of when you're speaking, right? So sometimes when I want a specific point to land, I take a pause after that point, and that point ends up landing a lot more because it gives the viewer just a slight second to ponder on what you've said. Okay. Another thing that you can use, gimbal. I really don't use gimbal shots that much because, well, a lot of you guys end up using the DJI pockets, which already have gimbal stabilization. Some of you are using your iPhones, some of you are using your cameras. A gimbal is nice to have, but it's probably not that important. Once again though, this is quite cool for, it just makes everything look smooth. It makes everything kind of glide. It's cool for like walking shots, for reveals, transitions. It gives off that vibe that, you know, come along with me type of a vibe, and the viewer has been invited somewhere. The mistake everyone makes though is they move too fast with the gimbal. So whatever speed you think is slow enough, you want to go even 2x slower than what you're doing, because cinematic gimbal movement is almost imperceptibly slow. You should barely notice the frame changing. It's very, very, very slow. The other thing then is you can use handheld, which is what most people will do. Most people will do within their vlogs, etc. And handheld with some stabilization, which you'll typically have, you'll either have digital stabilization in your camera, will have it within your lens, right? It adds energy and it adds rawness. So this is where a pocket camera actually earns its place. You grab it, you film, done. You don't need to set up like the gimbal, etc. On these like DSLRs, it's very, very hard to set up, you know, it takes quite a while. The next thing that we want to speak about is the pacing and the cuts. So for talking head videos, now once again, this applies if it's YouTube, it's of course going to be longer. So this doesn't apply to YouTube. This is more so for short form content. It also different, what type of short form content. If you're speaking like a more of a vulnerable story, you don't want to be using that much B-rolls. Whereas if the story is like fast paced, then you can afford to be using a lot more B-rolls. But the rule of thumb is you cut every 5 to 8 seconds to a different angle or a B-roll. It just keeps the video visually alive without feeling too jumpy. I have a point to the B-roll, like what are you trying to achieve with this B-roll? And I also understand, okay, I captured this B-roll, how does it aid the story? Because a lot of people, they add B-rolls or they shoot B-rolls and they don't understand like what type of flavor or what message is this type of B-roll delivering or what's it adding to the story. A lot of people in their editing just add B-rolls for the sake of adding B-rolls, and it actually has the opposite effect. I'd rather the video be raw than just have B-rolls for the sake of it, because it looks incredibly amateur. To be able to tell who's real, who's not, who's trustworthy, who's not. So you need to be able to engineer these things correctly. Okay, so if you're trying to create a video that's more authoritative, like a VSL for example, you want to go static, locked off, tight frame. If you're trying to story tell, this is when you can have the more slower gimbal movements. Maybe as you walk through a park, you got the gimbal following you slowly and you're telling your story, right? This is more gentle, etc. Then this is where you have your handheld, you know, moving, you know, for example, in a gym. If you've ever seen the gym boxing B-rolls, where the camera's handheld and it's just shifting around, etc. It gives off the vibe of energy. If you were to just take that and just go still with the camera as someone boxing, it does not depict the same type of energy. So moving on to the next incredibly important thing. I would even argue that it's probably even more important than composition. And I'll tell you why. Because you can record somewhere that has terrible lighting and this footage it's unsaved. You can have the composition on point, the audio on point, the ideas, the B-rolls, everything, the editing, everything's on point. But if the lighting is off, it completely ruins the video. And no matter how much color grading you do, you can't save it. So lighting is incredibly important. And before I worry about composition, I always understand what's my source of lighting. So that's the number one thing you want to understand. What's the source of lighting? Okay, you see, lighting is incredibly important because directional light creates shadows, and shadows, they create the dimension. If everything is flat against my face, then you can't see dimension, you can't see the shadows. What you want to typically do is give off the 3D dimension on your face and in your body. That's what you want to do. And this depends on if you're using natural lighting, which is a lot more difficult to deal with, or if you're using artificial light. Artificial lighting is, for example, you're using the sun, right? So what you want to do is you want to sit facing a window. That's it. The light wraps around your face, creates soft shadows on the opposite side, and looks good with 0 gear. Typically you want to do this best in the early morning or the late afternoon because it gives off that warm, you know, angled light with character. The sun is a bit lower, so it gives off a much nicer look. If you're creating videos in the outdoor, with the sun right on top of you, everything looks really flat. The color is really hard to deal with, and it's a color grader's worst nightmare. So your editor is going to find a bit of difficulty recording. The sunset and sunrise probably gives off the most emotion within frames. So you need to be quite selective and careful here. The other thing is the artificial lighting, which is so much easier. And I'm going to show you an example of that right now in the studio on how to set that up. Okay, so just a quick example of how your lighting should be set up. So first and foremost, we have a light here with a softbox. Once again, your lights don't need to be this professional. These are of course professional grade lighting, but you can just use a very basic ring light. And this is set at 45 degrees to my face. Now this is probably maybe around 30 degrees, not 45. But the point is it's going to set a shadow within this side of my face while this part is going to be lit up. You can tell the difference right here between the chair. On top of that, I like to throw another light behind me at a 45 degrees angle, and this is going to create those nice kind of highlights on the back of your head, and it's going to give you that 3D shape. There's one more light that I'm using here, but this is a professional studio setup, and it's this one right here. And this one is just giving me that effect, right? It's giving me that effect that there's some lighting here on the back like that. It's as if it's a window. You don't need that. All you need is one light at the corner back here, another light right here at a 45 degree angle, and you're sorted. The last thing we want to speak about is color temperature, because color temperature once again evokes so much more emotion. Okay, you're able to understand what type of emotion can I evoke through color temperature, whether you're going for the more cooler looking lights or you're going for the more warmer lights. So between 3200 to 4000 kelvins is the warmer type of lighting. Okay, this feels inviting, it's personal, it's good for storytelling, reflective moments, etc. When you're going for like cooler lighting, which is 5,600 kelvins and above, this is more sharper, it's more precise, you know, it's good for tactical breakdowns, it's good for business topics. Once again, there's no rules though. You can play around with it. These are just guidelines. Creativity comes from being able to go outside the box and break the rules. So it's very, very important to understand, right? Creates visual tension, creates nice diversity within the frame. This is typically the look that people associate with high-end. People can't tell what makes lighting look good or why a shot looks good, but this is the stuff behind it that makes it look good. You can have desk lamps, LED strips, monitor glows, anything that's visible in the frame. These aren't lighting you, they're just lighting the environment. They add color and texture to the background and separate you from it. So one key light on your face, two cheap practicals in the background, a dark room, that's a studio setup, £100, and it looks like you spent 10 times on it. Moving on, audio. Once again, imperfect visuals, okay, it doesn't have to be 10-10. You can have 7 out of 10 visuals and still look better than everyone else creating content out there. The minute you have semi-bad audio, everyone can sense it. It's a short section that we're speaking about here because it doesn't necessarily need to be long. The audio is the thing that breaks everything else if you get it wrong. A beautifully shot frame with hollow equi audio feels cheap instantly. So there's 3 fixes to this. First and foremost, you want to pick what mic you want to use. For me, the easiest mic setup is just a lavalier mic. Okay, you hook it up, buy the DJI, you got the Rode, you got the Holly Lark, hook them up, easy work. You could also have the shotgun mics which go on top of the camera. If you're very, very far with the camera, it's a little bit more difficult. I'd probably recommend this a bit more for like vlogging style, but the lavalier works all of the time. Okay, you clip it 15 to 20 centimeters below your chin. Doesn't matter if it's visible, and you're done. Then, or if you're in a room, which is a very, very hollow room, etc., etc., I would avoid probably recording these type of rooms. Although these times it's a bit more forgiving because now you have these AI, for example, Adobe Audio Enhance, I think, or Adobe Podcast Enhance, and that like can make your audio sound incredibly, incredibly good. So as long as you get the basic fundamentals done here, once you go to edit and you just deploy it into an AI enhancer, it makes the content and the audio sound so much better. The last thing is test the audio. This is one of the biggest problems I see all the time is people record content and they don't test it, and then it's like an hour of just pure value and you're in the zone and you're flowing, and then you come back and you hear that audio's trash. Test it. It takes 10 seconds to test. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about is camera gear. Gear is last because it's actually least important. Everything else in this guide that we've discussed, which is the composition, the movement, the lighting, the audio, has more impact on how your content looks and feels than what camera you own. But of course, you need these tools. And of course, they help. So here's the setup. Invest in a good camera. It will take you a long way. And it's the things that people are not willing to do that you're willing to do is what separates you from everyone else, because no one's willing to splash $2,000, $3,000, pounds, euros on a nice camera. The camera that I recommend is the A7 IV Mark IV. Honestly, amazing camera. It'll last you for the next 10 years. Also, I recommend having a nice pocket camera. You can use this for like side angles. If you ever set up a side angle, you probably don't need to be honest with you. But I think it's really, really good because it has the built-in stabilization. So it's just, you know, you grab it, you go. That's the system, guys. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I got one for quality, which is the main camera, which is the DSLR, and you've got the one for speed, which is the pocket camera. Your hero camera is when you're producing something intentional, and the pocket camera is when you're capturing something real. So 2 devices cover every scenario you'll ever run into. What I would say now is stop researching gear and just start shooting. There's people creating better content on iPhones than people with main cameras. Play around with it, get creative. The other thing is you want to consume a lot of content, because for you to try new things and experiment, you need to consume good looking content. So I would say engineer your algorithm to have good looking content on it, and you typically do this just by scrolling through, liking all these like filmmakers, cinematographers, etc., and just look at the content. Another thing you can learn from is movies and Netflix series. Let's be real, you guys watch it, even if you don't watch it anymore, which I don't. Even in the past, you've probably consumed it, okay? You can learn from that as well. Now, everything I've showed you here, the composition, the lighting, the audio, etc., none of it works alone. It's the concoction, it's the combination of all of these that gives off that cinematic feel, and it gives off the vibe that people should be following you, and it gives off the vibe that you have a purpose. Now that you've learned how to produce cinematic content, it's incredibly important that we design the place where it actually lives. And this is going to be your profile. In this chapter, we're going to take a look at profile architecture and how to make your profile also look cinematic so that it matches your content. Everything that we're covering in the video so far, all about the aesthetics, all about looking good, isn't the only thing that actually attracts clients. Because if you have very good looking content, which a lot of creators do, when I say creators is that they're just creators, right? They don't actually build a cult-like followership for what they offer or what they have to say. It's just because everything looks good. And That means it's incredibly, incredibly important that you first dial in your positioning. You need to dial in the intent behind the idea first. You have to dial in what this video or the specific reel is, the message it's trying to convey and the emotion it's trying to convey. So it's not all about the aesthetics. So if you haven't already dialed in your positioning, then I recommend that you watch the video on positioning on my channel. The link is going to be linked down below. Without this, no matter how cinematic your content is, it's simply not going to attract clients. Okay, so now you know how to make cinematic content, but the container of the content also needs to be structured and engineered in a cinematic way as well. One of the first things we take a look at is your profile picture. Okay, it's 110 pixels wide and it's doing more work than anything else on your page because it's the first piece of visual information anyone processes. It shows up in the DMs, it shows up in the comments, it shows up in the Explore page, it shows up in the story rings. See, before someone reads your name, they've already seen this image dozens of times. It's building or undermining an impression every single time. But most founders use a photo, typically from a random photo shoot. Or they'll use a photo that they took, with their iPhone, like terrible line or something at dinner or cropped holiday picture or group photo. The problem is, at 110 pixels, all of these things usually turn into a blurry, unreadable blob. So the profile picture needs to be specifically designed for that tiny circle, not just cropped into it. So what works at small scale, typically we found, is that the tight crop, head and shoulders only, nothing wider than that, very zoomed into your face, 110 pixels, you need to see your face fill most of the circle or it disappears, right? So a full body shot is simply just a waste. What we also found was you either have a clean background, either you can have a background, but your lens is really, really good that it creates a bokeh effect. So everything is blurred out in the background, or you just have a solid background in the back. On top of that, you want the grade to be consistent. So you want whatever color grade that you have applied to the profile picture to be the same color grade or the same color profiles as all the other grid images. We're going to speak about that in a second. So what you do want to avoid is sunglasses, right? Nobody can, people don't trust people that wear sunglasses. So I always avoid this in my content. I avoid this everywhere. So here's some examples of good profile pictures, right? Just some random profiles that I picked up. This, although it's not 110% zoomed into his head, first and foremost, it's still clear enough. It's not the best example, probably the worst example of the three, but still much, much better than the bad examples, which we're going to go through in a second, right? Also, the color grade of this matches his profile. This one, I would say, is the best one, right? It's clear. It's clear that it's shot professionally. I will also say that the lighting here is professional, so you can see dimension on his face. It's very, very professional. So it's clear that he shot this professionally, whereas this wasn't shot in a professional setting. It was most likely him just standing there, probably with his iPhone. This one also quite decent, but the sunglasses ruins it. But this is the ideal crop, and the background is really, really cool, really, really unique. And yeah, it just gives off like summer boy vibes, etc. So this is good, but remove the glasses. These are terrible. Like, what the hell is this? You can't tell who this guy is in the image whatsoever. This one is also terrible. You can't tell nothing about him either. If you're looking to get access to these exact same docs that I'm using here on the screen, simply just message me on Instagram. It's linked down below. Let me know that you need the docs and I'll send them over for free. It's not a problem. So moving on to the color palette, which is arguably probably the most important thing when it comes to overall aesthetics at a glance. The color is the fastest way to create visual recognition. Before someone reads your caption or watches your reel, they've already processed the colors. If the palette is consistent across your grid, such as your thumbnails, your stories, your highlights, your content starts to feel like a system. It starts to feel like you're posting things with an intention. It's not just a random collection of posts and different images. See, the result is a grid then that will end up looking like 5 different accounts merged into one. So how do you choose? Let's pick a primary color. This is the one that dominates, is the overall vibe. Then you have the secondary color. This is for your accents, your highlights, your text overrides, and then you just have a neutral base. This is typically the background tone that holds everything together, so it'll be like white or black, etc. If you're a training coach, you're probably going to be posting very, very different content. And if you're like a wellness coach, these people don't care if you have a nice car. Okay, so it's very, very different. So you always need to study first and foremost the people that you're trying to target, your ICP. This is incredibly important because everything that we're talking about here is just about looking good, but looking good isn't necessarily the thing that gets you the clients. So here's a very, very good example of a very, very consistent grid. You can see straight away exactly the vibe of color that he's going for. Okay, you can also see that he's alternating between different types of shots, which is really, really good. Most people just take pictures of themselves. But if you see here, he's not posing for every single picture. Some pictures he poses for, some pictures he's within his zone of genius so that the camera is just following him along. And it's as if it's like looking behind his shoulders, like behind the scene shot. Really, really powerful. Creates a creates a cinematic vibe. Okay. Also creates an authoritative vibe as well. Because think of like cinematic movies. So think of Netflix series. Camera's following the character around. The character's not performing for the camera. It just follows him around throughout his life. But he's a lot of authority within his posts. First of all, a lot of affluent settings, private jets, cigar vibe. He's attracting these type of people, right? That's his ICP. So this works for him. Might not work for you, of course, right? But you need to once again think, who are we trying to target? Him in his zone of genius, recording, PBD podcast, a lot of authority that he's showing here, social proof. Andrew Tate, Tristan, social proof. At an event with fan bases, social proof, etc., etc. This one doesn't have that. This is good in one thing. This one is good that it has a structure to the colors. So there's consistency within the color. This is definitely not as authoritative as this one whatsoever. So I would consider this one to be the best. This one is okay. He's getting there, but he needs to be posting a bit more about himself. Here is probably just posting middle of funnel content. Just focus on middle of funnel content, no top of funnel content. This one is a bad example. No consistency whatsoever. So cluttered. So much text. It doesn't tell you much about him. Yeah, you can tell he's a bit of a family man. Other than that, I understand nothing else. I get that he's probably something to do with AI because I see a lot of Claude. So the next thing is actually something that's incredibly ignored actually, which is your highlight. Very important because it sits between the bio and the grid. Prime position. Most people either ignore them entirely or they have a random mix of expired stories with inconsistent covers and meaningless titles like Vibe or Miscellaneous. They're worth getting right though, because they're one of the few places on Instagram where you control the sequence. You choose the order, you choose the colors, you choose the covers, you choose what someone sees when they tap through. It's a curated experience in a platform that's otherwise algorithmic. So this is a very, very important point actually. If you're using icons, keep them simple, thin line, icons, one color, centered. The background should be your primary or neutral brand color. Every cover should look like it belongs to the same set, so they need to share the same vibe. If you're using photos, make sure it's the same color grade as the rest of your content, same crop logic, same overall tone. Pull your best content or shoot specific frames for them. Then you got your titles, right? So keep these short, one word if possible, 2 max. Clear and descriptive, not clever. People need to first and foremost understand what each highlight contains without needing to tap on it. The next thing as well is the story aesthetics. A lot of people neglect the stories. The stories are supposed to feel casual. That's the format's strength. It's where people are more real, more relaxed, less polished. But casual doesn't mean that it should just be sloppy. There's a difference between being relaxed and careless, and the viewer picks up on it even if they can't articulate why. Number 1 is typography. Instagram's built-in fonts are fine for stories. There's just 1 or 2 that you want to stick with. And once you pick one, you just stick with that consistently. Okay. If you always use the same font and size for your story text, it becomes recognizable as yours, even in a stack of 20 other people's stories. Color match the text to your palette as well. Okay. So if you're going like with the warm vibe, like deserty kind of a vibe, I like to use the white box around the black text. Matches nicely. When it comes to the quality of the photos and videos, now the story don't need to look like your feed, so they don't need to be shot with a professional camera, right? But they shouldn't look like they were filmed on a phone from 2015. So you should still have good lighting, good audio. If you can, like, honestly, editing on your Photos app takes like 2 seconds. So I usually like to edit my photos, stories, even before I upload them, just for the sake, you want to have people associate you with professionalism. You want people to constantly associate you with premiumness. And it's in the little things that people don't want to do, that you're willing to do, is what will separate you from everyone else. So if it means that a story maybe is a little bit overexposed, the colors are washed out, you add a bit of contrast, it's very fast. You watch a quick YouTube video on how to edit photos, takes 10 minutes, you learn the skill for life. It's so quick to do, guys, honestly. Here's the thing, you're not always going to have the exact same color vibe or color grade consistency throughout your profile all the time, because your life works in seasons and the world works in seasons. People will get exhausted of the similar content you post over and over and over again. So it's good to be consistent. Then you apart and interrupt everyone and you switch up everything around. If you're grading your video content already, you start with there. Whatever you're doing in DaVinci or Premiere, we create a simplified version for your photos, match the warmth, the contrast, the curve. One hack to do it is have your editor grade the video. Then you simply just take a screenshot of the frame, put it into Claude. Going forward, any photo that I feed you, I want you to give me match the same color palette as the frame within this, and it will tell you every single thing to edit. So Claude will help you do all of this. Even guys, if you're editing your own videos, I tell Claude, help me grade this clip in a cinematic way, and it helps me grade it in a cinematic way. So now that we've went through all of that, I want you to go ahead right now, screenshot your profile, zoom out of the picture, and just squint. Does everything look cohesive? Do all the colors match? Look well put together, or are some posts standing out from other posts? And this is how you can tell if you have a well put together profile or not. And that's that for this video. Now you've learned everything that you need to build a cinematic personal brand. Some of you will walk away, some of you will implement, and some of you will walk away and you'll do nothing with this information, and this is why you'll stay stuck at the level that you're at right now. Now, if you need help with anything that we've spoken about today, and you need help to build a cinematic personal brand, plus help with positioning, plus help with actually being authoritative within your market, all you got to do is click the link down below. We'll hop on a call. We'll see how we can help you. We'll diagnose everything for you, and we'll discuss if we're a good fit together too. With that being said, make sure you go through the whole playlist on my channel of how to build $1 million brand. This is just one piece of the puzzle. You still are missing the other pieces. Once you put all of these pieces together, I guarantee you will be attracting much, much higher value clientele.